Because if it does, it'll spoil, including your gifts and your talents and your dreams. If you hold on to them, they're just yours. They'll spoil. They won't accomplish what He wants to see it accomplish. Have you ever done that with vegetables? You ever seen them in the back of your refrigerator after like 3 months? And they're not in those fancy green bags the lady sells on TV where they last 39 days or whatever? I found a potato in the back of my refrigerator 2 weeks ago. Did you know potatoes turn to liquid eventually and they drip? And it looks like vanilla. It's like, oh, it's nasty. I had no idea. But that's what happens when things are hoarded and they're not used. Seeds do the same thing. If you take seeds in a packet and they get a little bit of moisture in there, they'll spoil and eventually they won't grow. The things that He gives us, He wants to give them to us, but they're not just for us. They're for everybody else. The Bible talks about the gifts are given to the body. They're just through you. So the things that you have, the stuff that you have, doesn't even belong to you. The stuff that I have isn't mine. I just get to use it for a while. Because what we said last week was the first foundational point of worship is it all belongs to God. We just get to get in the way and use it a little bit. So the things He's given you, the dreams, the passions, the skills, they're not yours. And they're not just for you. They're for us. And so if you're really good at something, it's for our benefit. But if you hold on to it, you don't give it back, and if you hold on to it, it'll spoil. It'll spoil. It's interesting that when we release it back to God, He's not ever going to force it out of our hand. Think about this. You walk into a kitchen, and your child is in there, and they have a really sharp knife, and they have it by the blade, tightly. You have two ways to get that knife out of their hand. You can walk up and pull it, or you can walk up and say, "Could I have the knife, please?" Now, which is the best way? To ask. And that's all God does. He asks us to let go of the things. And those things are incredibly powerful and they're incredibly effective, but not if we're holding the wrong end. And God needs us to let go. So what He does is, He wants to take our stuff and our things and us, and He wants to turn us around and to make us a blessing to people. He wants to help us be a part of that process. He doesn't want to just bless people by Himself. He wants to allow us to participate. Number 3, we actually live, and I put it this way, between a rock and a hard place. We live as Christians, as followers of Christ, we live in a spiritual realm inside a natural realm. And the two collide. They butt heads constantly. Because we have to go to work, and we have to go to school, and we play games, and we do our thing. And so we're living in an ungodly world trying to live by godly principles. So we're caught and we're torn. And we want to do what's right, but sometimes at work they want us to do things that are wrong. Or we want to speak up, but we're afraid. And so there's this constant tension living between a rock and a hard place. And this is where our worship serves as our anchor. Our public worship, meaning at work, remember, worship isn't this. Our public worship, the way we live, is easily measured by our private communion with Him. If you have no private time with God, you're going to struggle publicly with God. It's the facts. And if you're doing great publicly with God, you're probably doing all right privately with God. There is a very direct correlation between quantity and quality. You have to have time with God. And we talked last week, some of us do it different ways. Some of us like to write, some of us like to listen, some of us like to sing, some of us like to draw, whatever your thing is. The more time you have with God, the stronger you will be to live out your faith in an ungodly place. Remember last week we talked about God who comes to Jesus and then the Holy Spirit who invites us to participate with Him, who then we offer our worship back to the Spirit who cleans it up, hands it to Jesus. Jesus goes to God and says, "Look, Friends Community Church, they're rocking out for you today. Look at how good this is." And God looks at it and says, "That's awesome." Same thing. If we don't have that time with God and hear His voice and respond, our worship's not going to be worth anything. And our worship is our daily life. I'd like to give you permission today to slow down. Right, Pastor Tom, that's funny. The pace of life in Orlando is fast. There's never a dull moment. Am I right? There's always something you could be doing, right? Every minute of your life is scheduled. It's pretty scary when you got 7th and 8th grade kids that have day timers that can tell you what they're doing in September. There's something weird about that. And I'm just trying to get you to think about this. We start at 10 o'clock. For those of you that are on other time, we start at 10 o'clock. Okay? If you come in at 10:05, you're going to miss 5 minutes. Because we're going to start at 10 o'clock. Why? Because I'm aware of the pressure for you to get out of here because you have other things you need to do. But I will tell you when we'll get done. We will get done at the same time every week. When we're done. I'm not going to promise you we'll be out of here 10 after 11. I'm not going to tell you it'll be 11:20. If God shows up, I'll stay all day. We live by the clock. That the clock starts to dominate our lives. I got a buddy the other night says, hey, can you come to this webinar thing I'm doing? And I just jokingly said, I can't, man. Smallville's on. And I don't even like the show. My point is, I understand you've got places to go. But could we agree that it's more important that we come here to connect people to people and people to God than it is to be first in line at the buffet? Amen. Can we just agree on that? Okay, so if anybody asks you what time your church service is over, your answer is always the same: when we're done. Fair enough? And the reason is because some of us, this is the only hour and 15 minutes we give Him every week. You know how I know? Because I used to live like that. And some of us, this is the only 20 minutes we look at the Bible all week. You know how I know? Because I used to live like that. And it's okay to admit that. But when we come here, can we just pretend like the clock doesn't exist? Now, I'll tell you this. My goal is to get you out of here 11:15, 11:20. But you know what? We sang some songs a few extra times this morning because I could tell you we're really connected. And if that takes us to 11:27, I'm sorry. Sort of. Because this is what this is about. This is about us being a family. Connecting with each other. Connecting people to people and people to God. Loving God, loving people. That's what this is about. That's the mission. Fair enough? Slow down. Slow down. Listen for God. In fact, this week, what I'd like for every one of you to do is when you get up in the morning, think of it this way. Every time you grab your car keys, all I want you to think is, I'm going to grab my car keys. That's my trigger thought. I'm going to say, God, what do you got to say to me? That's all I want you to do for 1 week. God, show me where you're already talking to me. Show me how I can already help somebody. You know, and how do I love my neighbor? You're at work and somebody says, I'm really struggling at home. Okay. I'll pray for you. That's it. That's all you got to do. You see somebody fiddling with their salad. You okay? Not really. Okay. If you want to talk about it, let me know. That's all. You don't have to jump down their throat. Just love people. Find them where they're at. Rub elbows with them. Pastors are shepherds of sheep. Sheep stink. You ever been to the fair? Have you ever been to the fair? Don't lie. You ever seen the 4-H kid at the fair? Every one of them kids smells. They all do. Why? Because they've been rubbing up against the sheep. And we need to stink a little bit. Pastors, there's a great book called Pastors Should Smell Like Sheep. And it's about rubbing elbows with people. And that's our job. Our job is to get out there, slow down, listen to people. And don't just listen to what they say, listen to what they don't say. How are things at home? It's home. What are they telling you? It ain't so good. They forgot Mother's Day. That's what they're trying to tell you. Something happened. Something's not right. Take time to slow down and listen for God. Pastor Tom, there's not enough time to worship God. Well, you better find some time. Because if you don't have that quality quiet time, you're going to struggle publicly. I know that's true for me. Find a way to find time. We have this idea in the church that if I'm busy, that means I'm spiritual. No, it means you're worn out. No, really, that's what happens. That's why people get burned out. Because they get busy and they're not doing anything that really matters or accomplishes anything, and they get frustrated, and that's why they fizzle out. I don't want to burn out. I'd rather flame out. I'd rather be so on fire and crash and burn at the end, but at least I